Join us right now covering the Detroit Lions. We could step away from the college conversation and get back to professional football in the NFL in your Honolulu Blue and Silver. Our good friend, Jeremey Reisman. He's got the Lions beat, Pride of Detroit. Visit prideofdetroit.com every single day for Lions news. Jeremey, my friend, you can find him on Twitter, Detroit on Lion, I should say that. How are you, my man? How's life? How are things?
I'm doing excellent, Anthony. How are you, buddy?
Hey, life is good. Rise and shine. This is great. I love when you say, I'm a morning person. Let's go 7:35. I said, my kind of guy. I'm already like 12 cups deep. Let's go. All right, first off, I want to talk about the fact that, is it true? Did we have all 53 players on the active roster available on Tuesday? Was everybody there in attendance?
Yeah, they absolutely were, which is exactly what you want to see out of the bye week. And not only that, 51 of them were full practices. The only guys that were limited was Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's dealing apparently with a rib injury, and I believe Khalil Herbert not Khalil Herbert, Khalil Dorsey is dealing with a little bit of an injury that he suffered during a special teams rep. But yeah, 51 guys fully healthy is just about exactly what you want to see.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. My biggest question going into the season would be how long, and I state this at least once a week, how long would our starting five on the offensive line, how many games would they make it playing together? They made it like a half before Hal Vaitai got rolled up on, and then it's been musical chairs and everybody bouncing around. Head coach Dan Campbell says that Graham Glasgow has earned the right to start at right guard going forward. Graham has just been, that's the reason they brought him back in the offseason. They knew that they needed some depth here, and this guy has just been, what a year he's having.
Oh, no question. It was kind of a nice little present that kind of fell into the Lions' lap a little bit. You know, you lose Evan Brown in the offseason. He goes and becomes a starter in Seattle, and he was kind of a key piece last year, too. He was kind of doing exactly what Graham did, which was fill in wherever they needed him. And Graham just so happens to get released from the Broncos. He wants to come back to Detroit where he gets to play with all his buddies and where he grew up. And so it was just kind of a perfect match there. And you're right. He's just been absolutely killing it at every position that they need him to do. And it's funny. We talked to Graham, and he's so nonchalant about everything. He's like, yeah, it wasn't great having to, play center in training camp where I was competing for the right guard position. It wasn't great to be playing left guard. It's harder, but he just goes out and does his business either way. And that's exactly what I think this regime wants in their players and just players that go about their business and do it perfectly. And Graham has been playing near perfect ball so far. So yeah, it's been a really nice, fortunate situation for them and good for him to finally earn that job outright.
Yeah, and it was pretty incredible. And obviously they're going to keep tabs on Big V and Halapoulivaati Vaitai and see where he is at as far as getting back. But to be able to have Graham Glasgow there, and I'm glad you mentioned Evan Brown too, because what a stud he was for this team and the versatility on that offensive line. Now this week we should have Jonah Jackson back. We should have Frank Ragnow back. You add your bookend tackles in Sewell and Decker, and now with Glasgow. But this is a very, very difficult test. This LA Chargers team sitting at 4-4. Riding a 2-game winning streak, but we know that defensively they've got some guys that can get after the quarterback. Guys with a name like Khalil Mack, who had like 6 sacks in one football game this year. They have a Bosa brother. Like, this is a very difficult test for this group.
No question. I think the Lions are getting healthy right at the right time. And listen, their bookend tackles have also been balling out this year. I mean, Penei Sewell is arguably the best right tackle in football, and Taylor Decker has always been really good in pass protection and is continuing to play at a pretty high level despite being one of the older guys on the team. So you're right. It's a good matchup. The Chargers are also very good statistically against the run. I think they're 6th in yards per carry allowed and 6th in overall yardage per game allowed. So it's really going to be a test for all 5 guys, and to have all 5 of those guys back when you had essentially 3 backups in the game against the Raiders just a little over a week ago. It's really kind of a fortunate situation. And if you're a fan of football, if you're a fan of kind of the grind of the game, the old school football, this is going to be one of the more fun matchups to watch, I think, on all of Sunday's slate of games.
Yeah, it's going to be a doozy, man. I'm cautiously optimistic because I live in a state of fear, because why wouldn't I be? I also want to mention Colby Sorsdale, because he was, here's a guy that they selected, in the 5th round out of William and Mary, and we don't even know who this is. And this is why you have to trust Brad Holmes and the individuals that he has put on staff in order to scout and select guys. There might be nobody more dangerous in the NFL than Brad Holmes, the draft card in his hand right now. This guy has been dynamite. And Colby Sorsdale comes in and plays 86 offensive snaps. That's like a college number. The offense was on the field the entire day versus the Raiders.
Yeah, no, it was kind of fantastic to watch. Just, I mean, it's obviously great practice for him too, because I think there's a chance that guy develops into a long-term starter. When Brad made that draft pick, I think a lot of us were scratching our heads and saying, who is this guy? But some of like the deep football analysts, particularly on the offensive line, were like, yeah, this is a diamond in the rough. The Lions may have knocked this one out of the park, and it's not only good practice for him, but you also have to remember this guy also filled in at right tackle earlier in the season when Taylor Decker got hurt. So just to have a guy like that, that they can fill in multiple spots already as a rookie, play 86 snaps in his first career start, and help the Lions get over 200 rushing yards. He's already an asset to this team, and I think he's just kind of scratching the surface of what he's capable of.
This is a football show, folks. We start in the trenches. Everything starts at the line of scrimmage. And if you're wondering, when Jeremey just said that Taylor Decker got hurt and Sorzo was playing right tackle, it's because Panay moved over. It played left side, and that was the versatility of bringing in a guy who was a left tackle out of college but could play both sides. And it's like, why wouldn't you just draft him and move him to the right? You don't need to move away from your left tackle and Taylor Decker. There was a lot of talk when Panay was drafted about that, but this is the circumstance that played out for us in real life. Now, we'll get to the trade deadline stuff. Going into this football game, you already mentioned his name, Donovan Peoples-Jones. The Michigander is back. All the cool videos of him dressed up as a little kid and the video about him talking about being drafted by the Lions and in that Lions jersey as a child who didn't have one of those growing up in this area. What do you think I don't know about his impact this week because obviously, as you mentioned, with the rib injury, but overall, why Donovan Peoples-Jones? Why wide receiver, and how does that affect the potential targets that Jamison Williams might get, but also just the overall playing time?
Yeah, it's a fair question to ask, and I'll be honest, I was a little bit scratching my head at this one. I didn't really expect the Lions to go after a wide receiver. I thought maybe they were, they were getting Antoine Green, the rookie 7th round pick, some action. They're giving Jamison Williams more action. Obviously, you lose Marvin Jones for the personal issue, and he leaves the team. So I think that's kind of where they were targeting, but I thought maybe that was going to be their opportunity to give Jamison Williams, to give Antoine Green even more reps. But I think it probably says a little bit more about Antoine Green than it does Jamison Williams. I mean, you even look at the last game, Antoine Green didn't have a ton of snaps. Jamison Williams still did, and Jamison Williams actually got more playing time, I think, in critical situations, whether they were third down or some red zone looks. So to me, it looks like they're continuing to ramp up Jamison Williams' playing time, and I don't think they're going to scale it back just because they brought in Donovan Peoples-Jones. And I wouldn't be surprised if Donovan Peoples-Jones was maybe even inactive this first week because he's dealing with the rib injury, because he's still learning the playbook, all those sort of things. But it is another outside receiver that brings a lot of speed and athleticism and also can catch some contested catches. And the Lions just are kind of bare bones when it comes to those kind of guys on the roster. You have Josh Reynolds, but that's kind of it in that mold. You're hoping Antoine Green develops into that guy, but I think maybe that we just haven't seen it. Obviously Jamison Williams is getting all this attention, and rightfully so. He's a first-round pick compared to Antoine Green, 7th-round pick. But I think Green is also kind of taking a little bit time to develop, and so I think they just want a veteran, a trusted guy, a guy that's going to hit his marks, and given that Donovan Peoples-Jones has been in the league for 4 or 5 years now, I think that's what they're looking for, just a steady guy that they can trust.
Jeremey happens to have a Honolulu blue crystal ball underneath his bed, and Jeremey, grab that for me if you could real quick and look into this. Tell me about David Montgomery on Sunday. I mean, I love Jahmyr Gibbs, love what he was able to do. He can run between the tackles. The patience that Austin Eckler was talking about, just zone running, and why Monty was getting more touches than Jahmyr Gibbs, and he talked about all the different positives of Gibbs, but just the little nuances of being able to play that position and talk about trying to process in real time, right? It's amazing what these guys can do. Will Monty be out there on the field on Sunday? If so, what do you expect to see from a workload standpoint?
Yeah, no, I think he's so critical to what they do, and I know that Jahmyr is coming off a career game and his arrival game maybe, but Dave Montgomery is still, to me, I think they're going to be their 1A back to Gibbs' 1B. Now, I think Gibbs has done enough in these past 2 weeks to warrant a bigger piece of the pie when both players are on the field. Maybe it's going to be closer to a 50-50 split, but I still kind of view Montgomery as their starter. And what I'm curious to see, and we've seen flashes of it, a little bit in the first half of the season when both guys were healthy. We saw some of it in training camp. I want to see if there's more 2 running back sets where both those guys are out there, because to me, I think both those guys are essentially going to be critical to what this team wants to do on offense. And because both of them now have proven that they can do a little bit of everything, Gibbs can run between the tackles now. Gibbs can pass protect a little bit better than he was earlier in the season. Monty can go out and catch a pass, which is something I think maybe has gone underutilized. If both those guys can do anything while they're out there, that's going to put a lot of stress on the defense when they're both out there. And you don't know, it's not a tell if Jahmyr Gibbs is out there that he's going to go out there and run her out. Maybe he's going to run in between the tackles now. So now that he's developed that trust, I think it opens up the playbook for the Lions. I think it opens up for a little bit more creativity for a guy like Ben Johnson, who we know is a very creative mind. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. And maybe we don't see it right away, but I think that's what this offense is building towards.
Now, I got a question yesterday, and I said, you know what? John in Detroit wanted to know what happens here. And I said, well, I'm talking to Jeremey Reisman tomorrow, so I'll ask him on the show. And John in Detroit wants to know what happens when C.J. Gardner-Johnson is available to come back off of the injury report here. What happens with Tracy Walker and Kerby Joseph? And, Kerb will stay, I would assume. But what happens with Tracy Walker? And, how does that affect this secondary? I mean, we're talking weeks away right now, but I told him I would ask you, and I'm a man of my word.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know if they're going to get CJGJ back at any time soon, maybe not even in the regular season. I think it's right around that deadline where we're talking playoffs instead of the regular season, at least the way I understand his injury. But if he does come back, I think that probably moves Tracy back to the bench like they started the season. Because it's interesting, even last week, they had Brian Branch play 100% of snaps. Tracy Walker, I think, came off for about 10. And when he came off of those 10 snaps, it was Brian Branch who dropped to safety. And so I think it's clear that Tracy Walker is kind of, the third in line, certainly behind both, I would say, CJ, and Kerby Joseph. So I think that's probably their plan. They do like what Tracy brings on special teams. He's actually still playing special teams because they like what he does there. And so I think he just becomes a valuable depth piece that can fill in at any time, pretty much at any safety spot too. He can play in the box. He can play your deep single high. So it's an unfortunate spot for Tracy if it gets to that. But in the meantime, he's playing at a pretty strong level now. And I suppose, over the next 5-6 games, he can prove himself much like Graham did, but I would think that's probably a pretty low probability, and I would imagine that once Gardner-Johnson is back in the lineup, that he gets moved to the bench.
At the linebacker position, we saw an uptick here with Jack Campbell and Derek Barnes. Jack Campbell played like 31 snaps. Derek Barnes played 17. Here's a little bit of a change now. Alex Anzalone out there for all 46 defensive snaps. It sounds crazy that we had 86 offensive snaps for the Lions, only 46, right. And I'm like, wow. We're talking about all players. I haven't even got to the play calling here. We could do this for hours on end. Alex Anzalone plays the whole game. That's fine. Jack Campbell, primarily the Mike linebacker here. Yeah. Just 4 of Campbell's 31 snaps, came on the ball. They tried to move him around edge. Are we starting to see a little bit of a passing of the torch here from Campbell to Barnes?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell with a sample size of 1 here, but that's kind of my read on the situation. Yeah, and I think we all knew it was eventually going to start coming, right? As good as Derek Barnes has been playing, and as much as they don't want to take the guy off the field, and I think they'll still continue to put him on the field for a good portion of the game there. But I think, they tried putting Jack on the edge, and it wasn't working particularly well. We might still see that. We might see them go back to it because I don't think they've necessarily found an answer to that that Sam linebacker position where your primary is pass rush, but you also need to be able to drop back in coverage. Julian's been okay at it recently. Charles Harris is a guy that I feel like they're just not comfortable in that role. So until they find someone that can do it, I still think they're going to leave the window open there for Jack to do it. They've even tried Derek at it, and maybe that's something that they go back to and try, because I spoke to Derek about it, and he loved it. He was so excited when he was told that he was going to get some pass rush reps that he told his significant other, with a big smile on his eyes. So it's hard to say when this regime changes so much week to week, and we know that this regime is also now coming out of a bye week, which means they've probably done a lot of self-scout. They've probably done a lot of thinking about how they want to change things. They've changed things pretty significantly at the halfway point of the season last year and the year before. So Maybe Jack goes back to the edge. Maybe Jack becomes the full-time starter at Mike. I think we kind of have to wait and see here, but you're right that it was a pretty interesting data point last week against the Raiders that Jack really got more of that time in the mic.
He is Jeremey Reisman. If you're not following him on Twitter already, what are you doing with your life? Find him on Twitter, Detroit on Lion. A real Debbie Downer, according to the coach, Dan Campbell, as well. I love that video yesterday. I couldn't love that anymore. Jeremey, my man, thank you so much for waking up with us this morning, partner. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, you're the best, Anthony. Thank you, man.
I love that guy. And by the way, you can still sign up for the newsletter as well at Pride of Detroit. Visit prideofdetroit.com. If you're a Lions fan, you should be there every day anyways. Every day. Just click it. Just click, read, subscribe, swipe, do all that. You know I'm a big subscription guy, so you know if I'm saying it, it's the real deal.